So today you guys are all tuning in for the first part of our Ultimate OTIF series, the fundamentals of OTIF. So we'll go ahead and get into the agenda. Today we're going to be kind of talking about what is OTIF and taking a dive into the OTIF scorecard and how to understand your metrics and measurements. We'll also take time to answer any of your questions at the end, and we are giving you a full hour of content, but we're also going to do a bonus demo of our OTIF radar. And then just some housekeeping things. Yes, we always send the slide decks out. So don't feel like you need to take notes or screenshots. We will be sending this slide deck to you. And if you do have questions, now is a great time to put them into the chat because we usually get a lot of questions and we want to be able to get to all of your questions. But if we don't, we will be able to follow up with you guys via email and we'll answer all your OTIF questions. Other than that, if you haven't seen my face before, if you're a regular attendee, that's because I'm filling in for Melody as she is off in the land of Ireland. Very jealous.
So jealous.
So jealous. So I'm the content coordinator here at Supply Pike. And if you've been tuning in, you guys know Stacy. She's got 10 plus years of experience in the CPG supplier industry, and she'll be leading us today. So take it away, Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you, Allie. And everyone say hi to Allie in the chat. Everyone be nice to her. It's her very first time hosting. We're so excited for her. She actually just joined us, what, Allie, 2 months ago? Is that right? Am I crazy?
Feels like 2 years, but it is 2 months.
Yes. So Allie is awesome. And like she mentioned, she'll be filling in for Melody today. So everyone please say hey to her in the chat. But yeah, so we are going to go ahead and get this party started with a quick introduction of who Supply Pike is. To those of you guys who have been here before, we apologize for boring you and always starting with this slide, but we want to make sure that all of our newcomers have an understanding of who we are and kind of what we do. So we are actually a Northwest Arkansas based software company. And what we do is we create cloud-based tools to help our supplier teams maximize their cash flow. And we do this in a couple of different ways. The first of which is, of course, automatically detecting and resolving retailer compliance issues. So we do that through a couple of our apps, including Deductions Navigator, which is aimed at finding invalid deductions at retailers and helping you fight those, as well as OTIF Radar, which is, of course, aimed at helping you with your on-time and in-full fines from Walmart. We wanted to share that we also have another app called Retail Intelligence, and that is really focused more around sales and replenishment analytics. So you guys can see kind of across the screen a couple of brands that we are very, very proud to consider part of the Supply Pike family. I say this every webinar and I mean it every webinar. Hopefully one day, if we are not working with you guys already, we will be able to add your brand to our Supply Pike family. Alrighty, guys. So today we are going to be talking about the fundamentals of OTIF, really in 3 main branches. So first is the ABCs of OTIF. Second is how OTIF is measured. And then third is how you can use Retail Link to measure your OTIF performance. I always like to kind of level set before we get started with any webinar. Today definitely is more of a 101 course. As Ali mentioned, this is the first in a series that we are going to be having over the next couple of weeks. So if you kind of want those more 201, 301 courses, please make sure to sign up for those and stay tuned. But again, today is really to help us establish the fundamentals, make sure everyone is on the same page of what OTIF is, how you can calculate your score, and just understanding kind of what the program is at a high level. Later on in our series, we'll be talking about best practices on how to understand root causes of your OTIF scores, how to fight OTIF fines, and all of that good stuff. Okay, so really quickly, what is OTIF? So to those of you guys who may be newer to Walmart, OTIF stands for on time and in full, and it is Walmart's supplier compliance program really focused around supply chain success. So as you guys can imagine, Walmart being a retailer, their #1 goal is to make sure that they have product on shelf that is available for their customers to buy. And one of the ways they measure, whether or not you're able to get that product to them on time and in full is through the OTIF program. So one key thing to point out is that OTIF is a finable program. So what that means is if you do have poor performance, so they have certain thresholds, and we'll be talking about that shortly. But if you do not meet Walmart's thresholds for performance, they will charge you fines, which is basically 3% of your cost of goods sold. And how they determine those chargebacks, their scores are done on a case-by-case basis. And I don't mean like the metaphorical case, but the literal case that you ship to Walmart. So another thing to point out that not everybody knows is that there are different measurements for on time versus in full. So when they first introduced the OTIF program, you used to have a general OTIF score just as a whole. And now they've broken it out into an on time piece and an in full piece. So you can be fined separately along those two different silos. Okay, so as you guys can imagine, just as a general rule, high level, OTIF percentage is, of course, the number of cases that are on time and in full totaled, divided by the number of total cases that are ordered, and then you multiply that by 100 to get to your OTIF score. So pretty easy math stuff. But we like to kind of talk about as well who OTIF really affects. We get these questions all the time, and we want to make sure that there's some clarity behind it. So first, OTIF does affect any Walmart brick and mortar suppliers. So if you are currently selling products in Walmart stores, physical stores, you are going to be part of the OTIF program. The same goes for e-commerce suppliers. So Walmart actually breaks out even their OTIF scores into a brick and mortar score and an e-commerce score. And we'll talk about as well shortly how you can get access to both of those in Retail Link. So a couple of folks that OTIF does not affect today. Right now, that does not affect Sam's Club. It does not affect DSD companies. So if you do direct to store deliveries, it does not affect direct import because, obviously Walmart is taking possession in, the country of origin. It does not impact Walmart International. Now, one small caveat is the different Walmart International groups have their own version of OTIF. So for example, Walmart Canada has a Walmart Freight Collect, the program, that's what they call theirs. But we wanted to be clear that the OTIF program that we're talking about today does not impact Walmart International. And then of course it does not impact marketplace sellers. Okay, so at a high level, we wanted to kind of talk through what are the different OTIF goals that are, currently true and what the threshold is for Walmart. So you guys can kind of see here, there are, this column is talking through the expectations. This is talking who is applicable for, what the metric is that Walmart is really measuring, and then what the goal is. One thing you guys will probably see really quickly is the goal is 98% across the board, no matter the metric, but there are certain nuances for each of the metrics that I'll kind of talk through. And again, we'll go into a little bit more in depth as we go through the presentation. So the first one is if you are a prepaid supplier, the expectation is that you are to deliver your product to Walmart's DCs on time. And Walmart measures this using what they call the prepaid on time score. And again, that goal is 98%. So if Walmart says, hey, you have I've ordered 100 cases from you, the expectation is that you're going to get it here by next Wednesday. Then you need to make sure that at least 98 out of those 100 cases that Walmart ordered get to their DCs by next Wednesday. If you are a collect supplier, you have kind of a different set of expectations around on time. So you should be routing and confirming your POs on time, and we'll talk about that shortly. And then also ensuring POs are ready for carrier pickup. So basically, if you're prepaid, you are responsible for getting the product to Walmart's DCs. If you're collect, Walmart's transportation fleet actually backs up to your warehouse or 3PL to pick up the product. So you're not necessarily supposed to get it there on time, but you do have to make sure that product is ready when Walmart's fleet shows up to get your product. And then for the in full piece, of course, this applies to everybody, no matter if you're prepaid or collect. The expectation, of course, is that you are filling orders for the exact quantity that is ordered. So again, Walmart orders 100 cases. The expectation is that you are filling at least 98. And friendly reminder, like we kind of talked about, anytime you are dropping below this 98% threshold, that is when fines can start to kick in. So there are situations where we work with teams where they're at 99%. So even though they're not at 100, they don't actually get OTIF fines because they're still over that 98%. Okay, so now that we've kind of understand at a high level how Walmart kind of breaks out their OTIF, accountability, we're going to start deep diving into each part of OTIF. So what does my score mean? What does it mean to be on time? And what does it mean to be in full? Okay, so first part is what does my score mean? So I'm sure if you guys have ever gone onto the OTIF scorecard and retail link, you've probably see a whole bunch of numbers and you're like, okay, what does any of this mean? And if not, no worries, we will show you guys how to get to your OTIF score. But one thing that we kind of like to call out for you is that Walmart does actually take accountability for certain aspects of OTIF. So when you are looking at a general OTIF score, you are essentially looking at a Walmart and supplier accountability score kind of meshed into one. So all it's looking at is how many cases were on time and in full divided by how many cases were ordered, and that is your OTIF score. However, kind of the only part that many suppliers really care about is really just the supplier accountability part, because when Walmart is assessing OTIF fines, they're only going to be penalizing you for anything that falls under your accountability. So high level, your score is Walmart and supplier kind of meshed together, but you need to know to break that out into Walmart's accountability and the supplier accountability, because again, Walmart is only going to fine you on anything that falls under your accountability. So a great example of this is, let's just say Walmart system accidentally orders 10,000 cases when usually they order 100. So clearly there was a system error. So even if you were to cancel that out, this is clearly Walmart's accountability. You would not be held responsible for that in full piece, because Walmart says, yeah, you're right, we should not have ordered 10,000. You canceled it, we're good. Now, of course, kind of the flip side of that is, let's say Walmart ordered 100 and you weren't able to ship 100 there are a million reasons why, just supply chain issues or lack of inventory, or maybe you guys just missed the PO for some reason, then of course that would fall under your accountability. And then in which case, if you aren't in full at that 98%, then you would be fined for those set of cases. So, what does it mean to be on time? I kind of mentioned this at a high level earlier. There's a difference between being a prepaid supplier and being a collect supplier. And we'll kind of talk through each part of that. So if you are a prepaid on-time supplier, as I mentioned earlier, you are responsible for providing the transportation to Walmart. So usually these are the teams that are working with carriers to say, hey, make sure that it gets to the Walmart DC by X date and X time. You or the carrier schedules the delivery appointment with the DC. And then again, cases are expected to arrive within the MABD window at the DC. So really quickly, again, to those of you guys who may be newer to doing business with Walmart, MABD stands for the must arrive by date. And of course, it's basically the window of time that Walmart expects you to deliver your cases in order to be in compliance. So this is determined by your lead time. And basically your lead time is how much time Walmart expects the order to take after it is placed. So for example, today is the 3rd. If your lead time is 7 days, then your MABD will be, May 10th. Now, one thing that I want to call out to you guys, if you have issues with your MABD, so for example, maybe your MABD is too far out, or many times we see it's just too close, like my MABD is tomorrow, that doesn't make any sense. You can actually make adjustments to your lead time utilizing something called the lead time audit form. So not many people remember this, just because lead time audit form is something that you set up like way in advance, like when you first start shipping to Walmart. And so a lot of times people forget what they put in their lead time audit form with Walmart. So I actually recommend like reviewing this on at the very least every 6 months, if you can, and if you have the time on a quarterly basis. But just to make sure that if you are, if you've changed carriers, if you've changed your warehouse, If you guys have become more efficient in how you ship, or maybe even less efficient in how you ship just because of things like truck driver shortages, you want to make sure that you are always keeping an eye on your lead time audit form so that Walmart is providing correct MABDs for you. So you guys will find that there are different delivery windows in the OTIF program. So 1 day window, of course, the order must arrive on the exact MABD date. A 2-day window, the order must arrive the day before or the day of the MABD date. And then 11 to 11 a.m. window, the order must arrive between 11 a.m. the day before the MABD and 11 a.m. of the MABD date. So again, like Ali mentioned, we will be sending you guys a recording of this webinar as well as the stack. So don't worry about having to like screenshot or anything like that. But this is good to know. Not every team knows that different departments and different categories and merchandising alignments will have different delivery windows. So this is really good to know. And this is really good to make sure that you are sharing with your carriers, or if you guys are the ones that are setting appointments, being aware of what these delivery windows are. Because again, if you deliver out of those windows early or late, the OTIF program will fine you equally, regardless if you are early or late. So this is just good to know. Okay, so moving on from the prepaid side to the collect ready side. So again, prepaid is you are providing the transportation to get the product to the Walmart DCs. Collect ready means that Walmart is providing the transportation. So Walmart's fleet is backing up to your warehouse or your 3PL to pick up the products and then deliver them to their DCs. So there are a couple of different aspects that fall under collect ready. Again, some of these not every team knows about, but one of them is that you need to make sure that your orders are confirmed and routed by 4 p.m. Central Time the day after the PO is sent. So a lot of teams that we've worked with, before working with Supply Pike, we commonly hear, oh, it's within 24 hours, or, oh, it's whenever my product is ready. No, Walmart's expectation is that you are routing and confirming orders by 4 p.m. Central Time the day after the PO is sent. If you do not do this, you are technically out of compliance with Collect Ready. Second one, and this is usually fairly easy, and a lot of teams usually have this on lock, but just making sure that the order is actually ready for the Walmart fleet when they get there. So you want to make sure that your orders are picked and staged and just ready to load into the trailer, as opposed to, let's say, the truck gets there and now they have to wait an hour for you guys to make sure that you have all the products ready to go. So generally speaking, this one, like I said, our teams are usually pretty on top of. The 4 p.m. routing sometimes will catch people off guard. So just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. So one part to call out to you guys, you'll notice that this is called prepaid on time and collect ready. There is also technically a collect on time metric, but as we kind of mentioned earlier, there is Walmart accountability and supplier accountability. And this is a Walmart accountability metric. Because of course, once Walmart picks up product from your facility, it's out of your hands, right? So you can't really control when and where their fleet goes. So you don't really have to worry about this collect on time metric. You will never be fined for it, but you will see it on your scorecard. So it's very common if you guys are collect suppliers, for example, you will usually see collect on time anywhere between like 40 and 60% is very common. And many times this will drag down your overall OTIF score, because remember, your OTIF score counts for both your accountability and Walmart's accountability. So a lot of times our collect suppliers will have OTIF scores of like 60% or something like that. But it's always good to kind of take a look at the second layer and go, okay, it's not 98%, but a big chunk of that is being dragged down by collect on time. I'm not going to worry too much about it. So one other thing I'll call out on collect on time, just make sure that you know why your scores are, kind of maybe not where you want them to be. We've worked with suppliers that work with buyers that, will not be super happy about an OTIF score until they're like, whoa, 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 it's collect on time. Don't yell at us. This is a Walmart issue. And they're like, okay, fair enough. So just make sure you understand the breakdown of your scores.
Hey, Stacy, we had a question about some on-time things.
Yeah.
One of our participants asked, in Nova, you can see the DNRB dates that are usually a 3-day window. And they assumed that orders could arrive anytime between the DNRB and the must arrive by date. Is that not correct?
So DNRB is do not receive before, which I can totally understand why DNRB and MABD, you would logically, one would think that that makes sense. However, unfortunately, the only delivery windows that Walmart cares about is the stated OTIF delivery windows. So if you are, and one thing you can check with too is if you're seeing a lot of, and I'm not sure if this participant is prepaid or collect. If you are prepaid, if you are seeing a lot of early deliveries because you're kind of going by that DNRB date, then that's probably just kind of showing you guys that Walmart really only cares about the stated OTIF delivery windows. If you're collect, it's a little bit harder to tell just because again, Walmart's fleet, kind of enters a black box once they pick up your goods. But yeah, I would go by OTIF's delivery windows, not the DNRB. But good question.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay, so last piece, guys, we've kind of talked about all the on-time piece for the prepaid and collect piece. And now I want to cover the in full. Thankfully, in full is the most straightforward, as you guys can imagine. Basically, how many cases were in full divided by how many cases were ordered, and then you get your in full score. So very, very straightforward. Again, that example that I gave you guys earlier, Walmart ordered 100. If you shipped 98, you are technically in compliance. If you shipped 97, now you start to be liable for OTIF fines. So very, very straightforward, pretty easy to follow. So a couple of kind of quirks that we like to call out around the MABD program or OTIF program is two things. So first is around the original versus adjusted MABDs. So you may from time to time see original and adjusted MABDs, and you may go, okay, so like which one am I technically accountable for? So if it is a system generated order, so what that means is like you are in regular replenishment with Walmart and they just cut, their regular weekly orders with you guys. If this is true, Walmart will hold you accountable for the original values. So a great example of this is, let's just say your MABD is next Wednesday, like we talked about. And then let's say that you are having an inventory, and this is just a regular replenishment order that you received, and hey, the MABD is next Wednesday, and for some reason you aren't able to get it there by next Wednesday, and so you ask for an MABD extension with Walmart, which is something you can do, and Walmart says, okay, sure, we will grant that MABD extension. Regardless, Walmart will still hold you accountable to the original MABD. So even though you have extended that MABD with Walmart in their system, you are still accountable to the original one. Now, of course, again, there are going to be, with Walmart, I am preaching to the choir with you guys. There are a million variables in the situation. So again, let's say Walmart messed up an order, for example, and they put the MABD as tomorrow, which of course is unrealistic. If you do have a situation where then you have to push the MABD out, then of course you can work with Walmart to say, hey, you can't hold me accountable for this. This was a system error, so on and so forth. But we just wanted to kind of share as a general rule, if you have an MABD that you can't meet because of something that your team is responsible for, then of course Walmart is going to hold you to those original values. Now for adjusted values, Walmart will actually utilize these for any manually generated orders. So if, for example, you guys cut an SSO, a store specific order, or you guys are writing promo POs or mod drop POs or anything like that, then Walmart will typically utilize the adjusted values rather than the original values. So that's kind of one of the quirks to be aware of.
Hey, Stacy, we have another question about maybe a quirk with MABD. So one of the attendees says that their MABD jumps days at least once a month. So if their MABD is on a Monday some weeks, it will move to a Sunday. Is there a reason why this is happening?
So that is a very interesting question. And again, my guess is that they might be a collect supplier because typically it's going to follow your lead time. So if your lead time is 7 days, you're usually going to get it 7 days out. If it is fluctuating like that, my guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, whoever asked this question, but my guess is that they might be a collect supplier. And so this is just dependent on Walmart's fleet and lanes. So whatever Walmart is able to satisfy, they have kind of more real-time data around their transportation. And so they may adjust things accordingly. So that is my guess. Usually I wouldn't be too concerned about seeing things change within, plus minus 1 to 2 days. If, however, you get an MABD that is suddenly plus 7 days out than usual or 7 days less than usual, that is something that I would absolutely kind of run up the flagpole with Walmart and say, hold on, what's going on here, especially if you're prepaid, because you are liable for that. So you want to make sure that if Walmart is doing something wonky with your MABDs, you want to make sure that you understand why, what the purpose is, and how to stop it if it's incorrect. Because you don't want to get hit with OTIF fines later on down the road for something that is kind of out of your control.
Definitely. And would that be a question to ask your buyer, or is there another team for that?
Yeah, great question. So for that one, typically I would talk to your SSM or your RM. So your SSM is your supplier solutions manager, and your RM is your replenishment manager. And both of these teams, by their powers combined, should be able to give you some feedback on your MABDs and what is going on there.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy.
Yeah, cool. Okay, guys. So the other quirk that we wanted to talk you guys through is the reason codes for canceling POs. And this really falls under more, of course, the in full side. So there are times when, of course, every supplier, especially in this kind of post-COVID, I don't even know if we can call it post-COVID, in COVID era, whatever you want to call it, has to cancel POs. That is a very common thing. And just really quickly, guys, too, best practice, if you aren't able to ship, please make sure that you are submitting cancellations through the Nova system and not just short shipping. And the reason for that is because if you are canceling it in the Nova system, this kind of triggers Walmart to say, oh, okay, we're not going to get the amount of product that we expect this week. So we're going to increase, our order next week to make sure that we covered this past week's demand. If you're just short shipping, Walmart will just kind of go, oh, well, I guess we were going to get it. And maybe we didn't, and we're going to charge a supplier deduction or an OTIF fine. But kind of longer term effects of that is that it will impact your in stocks and your on hand availability, just because Walmart's like, oh well, we thought we were going to get it, so we're just going to keep ordering at a normal amount. But we just never get products. So it'll kind of mess with, deductions, you'll get OTIF fines, and then of course it messes with your, again, your in stocks. So if you aren't able to ship in full, please make sure that you are submitting cancellations through Nova. But along with that, again, kind of one of the quirks that we wanted to share is that when you are submitting cancellations, you can actually choose your different cancellation codes to kind of let Walmart know why you are canceling the POs. And you guys can kind of see here, this is actually from Walmart. So this is Walmart documentation, but some of this will fall under the supplier accountability and some of this will fall under the Walmart accountability. So the pro tip for you guys is whenever possible, make sure that you are selecting the Walmart cancellation code, because that will put that under Walmart's accountability bucket instead of yours. So pro tip for you guys. Now, of course, the caveat that we throw out there is make sure that is reasonable why you are selecting the Walmart code. So let's just say you really don't have product and it really is because you ran out of inventory. Of course, you can't put that it's Walmart's accountability because, they check those things and they will not be very happy that you've chosen them incorrectly. But just, we want to make sure that you are wherever possible and wherever accurate selecting Walmart to try and mitigate those in full OTIF fines if you are submitting cancellations. So just be aware of that. Okay, cool. So now that we've kind of established a baseline of what the OTIF score is, how it's calculated, and again, friendly reminder, guys, we will be having deeper dive sessions later on where we talk about how to root cause, how to prevent, and then also how to dispute OTIF fines. Again, today is more fundamentals. But the next thing that we want to talk about is how you access your OTIF scorecard on Retail Link. How do I view my scores? What do all of the numbers and graphs and charts mean? How can I track my PO data? How do I spot trends? And all of that good stuff. So if you guys have a Retail Link account and you've not accessed your OTIF scorecard before, you're more than welcome to follow along. And hopefully this will be helpful for you guys. So really quickly, to get into the OTIF scorecard, really easy, on your Retail Link homepage, you can go into the apps tab at the top of the screen, and you can just, Control or Command F and look for the OTIF scorecard, and you should be able to click that. One pro tip for you guys, if you are always looking for your OTIF app, there's a star kind of icon to the right of each of the tiles, app tiles. If you click that, it'll add it to your favorites, and then you can always access it from the front page of Retail Link. So pro tip for you guys there. And your OTIF scorecard should look something like this, and we will go through every component for you guys. So first things first, really quickly, your OTIF scorecard is going to be at the corporate level. So it's going to show you all of your 6-digit vendor numbers. If you want to, you can filter it down to just, one 6-digit number at a time. And this is, of course, kind of your vendor number. It's a better way to look at things, I think, just if you want to start root causing and deep diving into what might be driving any OTIF issues. For a lot of buyers, for example, they only care about OTIF scores related to their products. So, it's not really going to be helpful to give them a high level corporate view. If you are only, if you have 10 different buyers that you're serving, they're only going to want to look at their OTIF score for their particular products. You can also download any of the data from the OTIF scorecard. So if you need to, that is there for you. You'll see here that accountability breakdown that we talked about just now. So again, remember how we talked about Walmart does it by on time and in full. So you'll see kind of these donut charts for on time accountability and in full accountability. This kind of lighter green, of course, is what was actually on time. So in this demo account that we have, 23% of the cases, 23.94% of the cases were actually on time. The rest of it, you can see here, the supplier was responsible for 2.7% of non-compliance, and Walmart was responsible for 73% non-compliance. So again, good to understand, even though your on time is, in this case, 23%, I think that it's something that you can talk to your Walmart buyer about and say, well, Walmart, you drove 74% of that. You can also take a look at the breakdown. Again, if you're prepaid, it'll show you, how many cases were compliant, how many were not compliant, how many were actually received. Same thing for collect. And again, remember the nuances between the two. Prepaid is, did you get it to the DCs on time? Collect is, did you have the product ready to go? And then, of course, you can see here that we talked about earlier, collect is broken out into that on-time piece, which is, for this particular example, Walmart's responsibility, and then the collect ready piece, which is a supplier's responsibility. So again, making sure that things were ready to be shipped. In full, again, pretty straightforward. Hey, how many cases were ordered divided by, or how many cases were received in full divided by how many cases were ordered. And you can see here, guys, there's just going to be different kind of merchandising alignments that it's broken down into. So again, in this demo account, we just have home. If you guys are in multiple alignments, you'll see your scores across all of these different columns. Okay, other kind of interesting features for you guys to note is that you can actually toggle between the performance page and the charges page. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes where a lot of people really care about, because this is where you can see your affected cost of goods sold, your fines, and the supplier scores. So really, this is where you can go if you want to see what your OTIF fines are. So one thing that we like to call out is that if you click into this kind of calendar view, you'll see that there's an invoiced and projected kind of option. So invoiced is going to show you your actual fines, so what Walmart has actually invoiced you for, and projected is going to show what Walmart might fine you for in any months that they have not invoiced yet. So let me kind of zoom out a little bit and give you guys a little bit of background on how Walmart is calculating OTIF scores on what cadence. So this is actually done on a monthly cadence. So kind of how it works is Walmart's OTIF program is always about 2 weeks behind. So right now we are first week of May, so Walmart has not yet closed the OTIF month of April yet. So probably a week from now, Walmart will say, okay, I've got all of my OTIF scores in for April. I'm going to close the month of April. And then essentially you have 2 months between the time they close the month and when they actually invoice you for that month. So if you want to have any sorts of discussions around waiving OTIF fines, it actually has to be done within those 2 weeks. Again, from the time that OTIF month closes and the time they actually invoice you. So just so you guys know, typically speaking and historically speaking, Walmart has always said that once an OTIF fine has been invoiced, it is essentially impossible to reverse that fine. So anything that has been invoiced in the past, you almost have zero recourse with. Now, again, I'm going to be a broken record here, but of course, if there's any kind of, outstanding situation that you and your Walmart buyer have talked about and you guys aren't in alignment with, of course, those kinds of fines can be waived. But generally speaking, for, vast majority of the cases, if your OTIF fine has been invoiced, it is considered closed. So the only way historically for you to have gotten any sort of relief for OTIF is you have to work with your buyer within that 2-week window that we talked about to essentially kind of plead your case, tell them this is why I should not get invoiced or anything in April. And then if they agree, they waive the fine. And then once kind of the end of the month hits, once the end of May hits, there's no fines there, so you don't get invoiced on anything and you're good to go. Now, why I say that historically is because Walmart has just recently kind of released documentation around giving you the ability to fight OTIF fines that have been invoiced through high radius. Now, we kind of say this with take it with a grain of salt because we have been exploring this with our supplier partners, and right now the success rate through, disputing through high radius is still pretty low. So we still kind of recommend, if you can, we think the best line of defense is to go to your buyer first during that 2-week period and try to get that waived. And then if that is not successful, then taking the high radius route and then trying to fight those OTIF fines. So just so you guys know. And again, this is something that you need to be evaluating every single month. Because once the next month rolls over, the slate gets wiped clean and you start basically an OTIF score at 0, and then you start the whole process all over again. So if you guys are not evaluating your OTIF scores every month, I would highly, highly recommend that you guys start doing that, because essentially, again, if the fine gets invoiced, there is some recourse, but practically not really. So you want to make sure that you're getting ahead of them wherever you can. Okay, and that was a very random detour. I apologize. Okay, so now you kind of can understand where your OTIF fines are coming from. The charges page will also show you your supplier scores. Remember how we talked about, there's a Walmart accountability and supplier accountability. So these are what your scores are without Walmart's accountability. And really, these are the scores that will determine if a fine is going to be issued or not. Okay. So within the OTIF page, you guys should also see this waterfall chart, and we'll kind of walk through it, as well as your kind of top 10 and bottom 10 scores. So the accountability graph, I think this is a really powerful graph. I think it's really important for you guys to kind of look at and understand, but it's going to break down, basically on a month-to-month basis, or just really whatever time frame you're looking at, where all of the different leaks in your OTIF bucket are. So it's kind of a cumulative chart. So, it'll start with however much you have on time and in full. So your overall OTIF score, 18%, and then it'll kind of add up all of the different parts of the accountability until you get to that 100%. So we're going to kind of talk through each of this. By now, you guys are experts, so I'm probably a broken record, but just want to make sure. So of course, we start with the on time, and then of course you go into not in full. So any quick cases that were ordered that were not received by Walmart. Late routing, what we talked about earlier, making sure that you are routing your cases by 4 p.m. the day after the order. Supplier ship point, this is what they call the making sure that your product is ready to go when the Walmart supplier gets there. So prepaid early and prepaid late delivery. Again, if you are a prepaid supplier, you need to make sure that you get the products to the Walmart DCs on time. And then another thing is the prepaid unscheduled DC appointment. So we didn't really cover this one today, but just so you guys know, if you're a prepaid supplier, you must make a DC appointment in order to deliver goods to the Walmart DCs. So you can't, your carriers can't just show up and say, here we are with product. If you do, that is considered something that is out of compliance. So you need to make sure that you actually do have an appointment. And you'll notice here too, guys, this kind of lighter tealish color is the supplier accountability. So this is really where you guys should really be focusing on. And then the darker blue is the Walmart accountability piece. So again, good to know and good to kind of see where, what might be driving your OTIF score down. But again, this is not going to impact your scores, and you're not going to be fined for anything that falls underneath these buckets. Okay, so another kind of interesting piece is the top 10 and the bottom 10 little graph / chart. And it's really the best way to see kind of your best and worst performing segments by metric. So you guys can kind of see here, you can sort it and filter it by different, drop downs. So what are my bottom 10 DCs or categories or departments or SBUs, whatever it is. And this is kind of helpful if you want to do any sort of root causing or deep diving into, hey, we need to kind of patch holes in our bucket. This is really where I would start to focus in on. Okay, so the other piece that I wanted to cover really quickly is it's really important for you guys to understand, so it's great to know what all of these numbers are. But if you want to do any sort of root cause analysis, and also if you want to try to work with Walmart to get any OTIF fines waived, then it's really important to understand the POs that are driving those scores. So kind of highest level is understanding what your OTIF score is, what's that percentage. Kind of second level is, okay, what is the breakdown of the different elements of my overall OTIF score? So am I getting hit with collect fines? Am I getting hit with in full fines? So on and so forth. And then kind of the third level to really complete that, OTIF pyramid, for lack of a better word, is to really understand the PO data that is driving kind of the middle scores, which are then of course driving that high level OTIF score. And so you can actually go there on the sidebar, there's this little kind of like document looking icon, and you can see the PO details that are driving the performance for each of your metrics. You can look at them at the line level. You can look at, the delivery information on PO lines. You can, of course, download any of this. It'll separate it out into different Excel tabs. And then this is really important too, is that you can select all of the different columns and also reorder them, and it'll automatically kind of dynamically update within the Retail Link OTIF scorecard. So this is a whole other can of worms that we will not get into today, but I highly recommend you guys join us for our upcoming other sessions, just because we kind of deep dive into what to look out for in the different PO data. But we just wanted to share that this is there for you guys to kind of understand, again, when there are non-compliant POs, it's good to know why and what happened. And is it because we didn't schedule a DC appointment? Is it because 90% of our POs are early, or are 90% of our POs late? Because once you understand the root cause, then you can start to determine what you need to do about that to remedy those situations. Okay, so I think the last piece that we're going to talk about today is how you can spot trends in your OTIF metrics. So the Walmart Retail Link OTIF scorecard does give you a couple of high-level metrics to kind of take a look at. You can see here, there's kind of this just line chart on like your on time versus in full, collect ready, and overfilled. And it'll be over, different periods of time. So it's good to know just, hey, am I trending up? Am I trending down? During busy months, am I able to kind of keep aligned with Walmart's expectations, so on and so forth. You can utilize the trend analysis tab to kind of identify trends by week. As we mentioned earlier, we would really try to focus on supplier accountable issues. You can also compare it to last year. So again, if you're up or down year over year, was it something that you were expecting? Was it not? So on and so forth. And then same thing here, you can filter by date to the time period with a drop and use accountability to identify specific compliance issues. So kind of another pro tip for you guys, you can actually click into any of these bars here and they will actually show you the related PO data. So let's just say you click into the not in full bar, it'll actually take you to that PO page and it'll show you all of the POs that Walmart considers to not be in full. And then you can start to do your research. Hey, is that true? Did we really not fill it? Or is it not? And hey, now we need to go talk to Walmart about this and say that, no, we actually did fill it in full and you need to waive these fines, etc. Okay, so I feel like I've been blabbing for a minute. I think we are at the general discussion part right now. And Allie, hopefully we've got some fun questions and happy to kind of talk through anything that the team has.
Yes, so we got a lot of questions and just general discussion about disputing. And I went ahead and linked our disputing OTIF that we did at the beginning of April. But know that May is all about OTIF for us. We are doing a webinar a week about OTIF. So next week is improving your scores. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But let me just scroll through all of these great questions. I had a couple of them pulled off to the side that I wanted to start with.
Awesome.
So we had a couple questions in the beginning about overages and shortages.
Okay.
How do you resolve those from a receiving end from Walmart?
Okay, so overages has been a really big hot button topic for us recently because, and this is not super relevant. Well, okay, it's tangentially relevant to OTIF. So Walmart recently released a program, another supplier compliance program called SQEP, which stands for the Supplier Quality Excellence Program. We actually just did a webinar on that last week, SQEP 101, and I think, Allie, we have that on demand at Supplier Wiki in case people want to download that. So if you guys are curious, please feel free to watch it. But so part of SQEP is they actually are now fining suppliers if you have overages on your POs. So if you're actually sending Walmart more than what they ordered, you can actually be fined for that. So there are kind of two different schools of thought around overages, and I always hate to be the person that can't give a black and white answer, but it really just kind of depends on the buyer team that you're working with. So historically speaking, so when I was doing this, if you did have an overage and you had proof of that, like you had a POD or a BOL or something like that, you could actually invoice Walmart for those overages, and 90% of the time they would pay for those overages. So we're working with supplier teams that are still doing that and still seeing success with that. So if you do have overages and you have proof of that, and maybe you misshipped something, you can invoice Walmart. And again, we are still seeing success with teams invoice Walmart for the overages and actually get paid for them. Of course, you have to be able to prove it, but surely by then you should have like some sort of proof of delivery or, again, BOL. But the other side of the coin to be aware of is that, again, with SQEP, overages is now a finable offense with Walmart. And how they are fining is, so they fine what they call a $200 administrative fee. So you get a straight $200 fine per PO. And on top of that, you get a $1 fine per case. So if you do have overages, just be aware that you can invoice Walmart. Most of the time you will get paid, but be aware that you also are at risk of a SWEP fine of that $200 administrative fee plus $1 fine per case. So just be aware of that. So it can be handled, but it is now a finable offense for Walmart. This is new.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes, I'm just seeing in the chat that they get you from all directions, it seems like nowadays. And it is true. With SQEP, that is one I would definitely check out because there are a lot of different rules and they're rolling out in different phases. Yes. So if you're not getting fined for it now, just wait next quarter. It's coming around the bend. So
oh boy. Will we be doing a follow-up webinar, Allie, on SQEP? I know it's a really popular topic, so I'm just curious.
As far as I know, it's coming back in June, and we will definitely be updating it as we know. I know the only phase that is not outlined is that last phase, and that's, I think, on scheduling and transportation. So that's probably overlapping this a little bit as well. So that we won't see that go into effect by the end of the year, but I'm sure it'll be announced by then.
Okay, perfect.
Another question we had was, can we get dispute fines based on the forecast provided? We received an amount in the forecast, however, orders are over that amount.
Okay, so my guess for that one is, so Walmart has a couple of different forecasts. One of them is a GRS forecast, which is around kind of what they expect to sell at scan level. So this is what they actually expect customers to go in and buy at Walmart. And then that forecast, GRS forecast, then feeds into another forecast that Walmart has called the supply plan forecast. And that is what Walmart expects to order from suppliers. And my guess is that this is what this supplier is asking about. So unfortunately, no. If you are getting orders from Walmart, even if they are above supply plan, Walmart does not necessarily consider that something that you can waive your OTIF fines on. Walmart's kind of legal and official statement on supply plan is not a commitment to buy. And basically that means it's not a commitment to buy more and it's not a commitment to buy less either. They truly consider it just guidelines for suppliers and nothing more. So they actually recommend for supply plan that you are keeping a minimum from best practice, right? And this isn't something that every supplier can do, but best practices that I've seen is you want to keep 4 to 6 weeks of safety stock in addition to supply plan in preparation for if they are to order more than they are kind of forecasting. Now, again, I love to throw caveats all the time, but of course, and of course, you need to look at the degree of variance, right? So if Walmart forecasted 1,000 and they ordered 1,200, I would say very, very hard to fight that OTIF fine. If they forecasted 1,000 and ordered 10,000, okay, like I'd say definitely something that I would go to Walmart on and be like, okay, guys, 10x is a little bit unreasonable, and definitely have those conversations. So I never want to say don't go to your buyer, because there's always situations where you can go to your buyer, but just be cognizant of the differences, right? So I would say plus minus 20%, Walmart considers that normal. Anything above 20, 30%, I would at least start to have those conversations. I don't know that you can get your OTIF fine waived, but you want to make sure that you're at least having those conversations and telling your buyer, like, hey, do I need to adjust my internal forecasts? Because you guys are not ordering to plan. So just be aware of that. Great question, though.
Yes. I think we have time for maybe one more. And if we did not get to your question, don't worry, we're keeping track of them and we will be answering them via email. And we'll put our emails up on the screen as well if you ever have any more questions. But if they're doing quarterly settlements on claims and they can't dispute individual claims, does that mean they're able to dispute overage fines as well, or is that different?
Yeah, so as far as I know, and again, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, and kind of misreading your question, but so quarterly settlement is actually around AP, typically around AP related claims. So this is usually around shortage deductions, and this is different than OTIF fines. So fun fact, with Walmart on a single PO, you can now get fined 3 different ways. So if Walmart considers this to be a shortage, meaning, hey, I ordered 100, I only got 80, for example, first they can hit you with a deduction. And so deduction is an AP related fine. And this is basically Walmart withholding money off of a check. So Walmart ordered 100, they think they got 80, you invoice them for 100 because you're like, I shipped 100. Walmart will say, oh no, I only got 80. So they're going to deduct kind of 20 cases off of that and only pay you for the 80. So that is an AP deduction. On that same PO, they can also fine you on an OTIF fine because it is considered, not in full for OTIF. So that is a 3% cost of goods sold fine. And this is an AR claim. So what that means is that Walmart is actually invoicing you. And just really quickly, we didn't really go too far into this, but with OTIF fines, they invoice you first, fun. And then if you don't pay it, they just take it off the next check. So, so might as well just take it off check. So it starts as an AR, eventually becomes a deduction. And now with SQEP, you can also get fined on that same PO because they will say PO accuracy. So you're not invoicing or shipping them what they expected. So quarterly settlements are typically for the AP side on the deduction side. So if you are only doing quarterly settlements now, I would actually recommend that you take a look at your OTIF fines as well, because you could be fighting both sides. One kind of sad, interesting thing is that very often Walmart's AP and AR teams don't know what the other one is doing. So even if you are able to get a deduction, let's say you fight a deduction and Walmart is like, yeah, you're right, our bad, and they pay you back, they won't actually turn around and reconcile that with OTIF. You still have to fight the OTIF fine. So if you're doing quarterly settlements, which I believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there are deductions, I would recommend you still try and fight your OTIF fines. You can still fight those simultaneously. And along with that, usually for deduction settlements, overages, you can absolutely still invoice Walmart for those overages. So I say go after Walmart in every way you can. Fight them, fight the deductions, fight the OTIF fines, and go get the overages. And one other thing that I wanted to point out, which is kind of tangential, it's not quite under OTIF, this is more under deductions. And I completely understand the appeal of the quarterly settlement process. It's just, usually it's a little bit easier for teams to deal with, especially, I know you guys are so time strapped and busy, but we actually have found that our suppliers will have a lot more success in winning deductions if they do it on an individual basis. So again, your mileage may vary with Walmart, but just generally speaking, our teams that were on settlement before usually have a success rate between 70 to 80%. Teams that we have seen do individual disputing, which is actually Walmart's preferred method of disputing deductions, they have win rates of over 90%. So again, fight. We love the little guy. We want you guys to get your money back. So if it makes sense, highly recommend just investigating the individual disputing piece just so you can try and get more money back if possible.
100% get your money back.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Stacy. This has been super helpful. And I know we are just in the beginning of our OTIF journey this month. So we have 3 more sessions on OTIF. Stick around. You can look at Supplier Wiki. We've got those going on. If you want to stick around for our OTIF demo, our OTIF radar demo, please do. But if you have to hop off, we understand. Thank you all for joining. If this is where you hop off, and know that if we did not get to your questions, we will be answering those via email, and we'll also be sending out the slide deck and a recording of today's webinar. So thank you all.
Awesome. Couldn't find my unmute button.
Yes.
Great. Like Ali said, thank you guys so much. And I am going to go ahead and get us to OTIF radar. Awesome. Okay, guys. So like Ali mentioned, we just wanted to give you guys a really high level overview of how we handle OTIF reporting. As we kind of talked about in our webinar today, there's a lot to know. There's a lot of different places to visit. We actually didn't get into all of the different apps that you can use to kind of check your OTIF information against. The OTIF scorecard is kind of the first place to go, but there's a lot more beyond that. So the cool thing about OTIF Radar is we are actually combining, data and metrics across 6 different apps within Retail Link. So we are looking at the OTIF scorecard. We're pulling data out of DSS. We're pulling data out of the transportation scheduler, request for routing, and a ton of other apps. So really, really helpful and impactful. So wanted to share with you guys, again, just high level what this looks like. So we have a dashboard that is able to track your performance over time. One thing that I wanted to kind of point out to you guys is, so with the Walmart OTIF scorecard, they can actually only provide you detailed data up to 13 weeks historically. So I should have mentioned this in the webinar, and I apologize, but if you are not, pro tip, if you are not currently downloading your OTIF data weekly, you will actually lose access to it. So you'll only be able to download like the last 13 weeks, and then kind of next week you lose access to the 14th week, and so on and so forth. So kind of the cool thing about OTIF Radar is, of course, we, when you come on board with us, we will download all of your data, and then we hold on to it indefinitely for you. So you're not having to download giant spreadsheets every single week, which is really nice. A couple of other things that we do that are pretty cool is we're also able to show you your potential fines just kind of upfront. So remember how we talked about, best practice is to go to your buyer and try to get potential fines waived before they're actually invoiced. So we kind of give you, an understanding at all, this is live. You can update, we update this, multiple times a week, and you really understand kind of where you are in the process and really determine, hey, what do I need to take a look at? And what do I really need to drill down into? Other cool things that we have in the OTIF Radar app are, we can also show you multiple points of view, just from different or multiple scorecards from different points of view. So like carriers, origins, departments, so on and so forth. So a great example of this is our prepaid suppliers work with multiple carriers, for example, and we will actually give you a scorecard for all of the carriers that you work with. Of course, this is just demo data, but you can see as an example, for this particular supplier, I can say, and again, this is not real data, so don't go after CH Robinson, but just as an example, you could say, hey guys, last month, of the $50,000 fine that I got, $22,000 came from you. Like, that's not acceptable. So we actually have teams that will utilize this data and go to their carriers, either to just pass on fines directly. We have some that have successfully done that, or even to just negotiate better rates, to say, okay, this month I'm going to eat this charge, but next month my expectations are that I'm going to get a better rate for your services. So just as an example. And of course, you can do this, as I said, across different points of view. So if you have multiple ship points, you can kind of hone in on, hey, is there a particular warehouse of ours that is just continuing to struggle, so on and so forth. And then the last piece, which is really kind of the meat and potatoes of the app, is we actually help you to create dispute documents for any of your invalid OTIF fines. So as I kind of mentioned, that 2-week period that we talked about, it can be done manually, but it is a very, very painful process for you to have to go in. And number one, you have to wait for the month to close. Then on top of that, then you have to deep dive into every single one of your POs and go, okay, is this a valid fine or an invalid fine? Then if you determine that it is an invalid fine, now you're having to scramble and find proof documentation to say, okay, do we have our shipping documents? Do we have our ASNs? Do we have our callback requests and things like that? And remember, you have 2 weeks to do all of this research, and not do the research, not just the research, but also start the conversation with the buyer, get them to waive it before it gets invoiced, so on and so forth. So it's a mad dash for a lot of our suppliers that are doing this manually. We, of course, are able, with the beauty of software, to kind of pull this all together for you automatically. So we can make judgment calls and are able to see, hey, what are ones that you have had callback filters on, or what are some where you have ASN discrepancies, so on and so forth. And then from there, you basically just kind of slice and dice the POs that are really relevant for you. And from there, you hit the Create Dispute Documents button, literally one click, and it will show you, basically kind of what you are selecting those documents for. And we'll automatically create a packet for you. It'll include all of your, again, callback requests, ASN discrepancies, shipping documentation, all of that good stuff in one nice, neat Excel file that you can then send on to your buyer. So we cut down what is usually a 2-week process to about 30 seconds, which is pretty sweet. And we've actually had teams successfully get their OTIF fines waived with their buyers using OTIF Radar. So really, really powerful stuff. And yeah, I think that's all I've got. I don't want to keep you guys too long. Just as a friendly reminder, so SupplyPike does have a 2-week free trial with all of our apps. I obviously am slightly biased, but I do really, really recommend it, just because I always consider it to be a really great gut check, right? So if you are doing amazing and you pull in your data and the data shows that you're doing amazing, you know what? Hey, that's one box that you can check and go, great, not going to lose sleep over it. Let's move on with our lives. And then kind of the flip side of that is, maybe you're like, hey, I'm not really sure how well we're doing. Maybe pull the data into the app and say, hey, okay, SupplyPike can help me identify some low-hanging fruit and make a determination on, do I need to deep dive into certain aspects of my OTIF score? And yeah, like I said, free trial, 2 weeks. We'd love to talk to you. And if there's anything else we can help with, that is exactly what Allie and I are here for.
Yes, thank you so much, Stacey, for walking through that. I always learn so much about our apps. I'm like, and they do that. So
it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and we will be seeing you hopefully this week. We have another webinar.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Bye.